Hey there lovelies, it's Sarah Lynn here from acatlikecuriosity.com and welcome to our Curious Chat Q&A session for August. This is a section that I post in my Curiously Gorgeous Sisterhood membership community, and that I also post in my free Facebook group, the Curious Community. And I post every month asking for questions from the members in those groups, and then I try and answer those questions as best I can via video, just to help give a bit of extra support and extra guidance, and just also to give back to the people who have joined my groups. So if you'd like to get involved in the question asking part of this chat session, I'll post the link. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll post the link in the description of the video so you can see all about the Curiously Gorgeous Sisterhood and all about the Curious Community on Facebook. And who knows, perhaps next month I'll be answering your question. So let's get started. I'm just going to have a look at my computer screen here, and let's see which questions we have. So I'm going to go to the Curiously Gorgeous Sisterhood group first. And question I have from Sama Morningstar. Hi Sama. How do you keep a balance between purely creative artistic time and all the other things that demand our time and attention in business and life? This is a really good question, and ordinarily I would say it's something that I'm quite on top of and quite lucky with regards to, in fact, because of course my business is all about creativity, so the two things intertwine for me quite nicely. Being creative doesn't necessarily mean time away from the business, but on the other hand that comes with its own drawbacks as well. Creating time that's just for me is not rare, but it can fall by the wayside sometimes. Recently I was on holiday in Ireland visiting relatives, and whilst I was there I took some of my painting supplies with me, as I always do, and while my husband was off climbing mountains and photographing fields and things, I was back at the house creating artwork, and I found that whilst I was there I actually managed to make something like 20 different pieces within the space of about 2 weeks, which at home I don't know that I would have managed. So things that I've noticed from that particular experience are, for me, how much time and energy keeping up with news and current affairs actually sort of draws out of my day. So at home here in the UK recently, there's just been upheaval after upheaval with Brexit and leaving the EU and Prime Minister's resigning, and like every 5 minutes there was some massive hoo-ha coming up on the news. And I found myself really sucked into all of that and really like watching and reading and commenting on everything, and I didn't realise how much that was taking away from the time that I would have spent being creative. So that, since I've come back, has stopped. I'm not saying I don't ever watch the news, but I've certainly cut that back. And the TV in general, I think, can be a big distraction for me, especially if I have a new cheesy TV show that I have a whole season, a whole box set to watch of. I can get a bit distracted by that, to be honest, and I end up doing things that I can do while sitting on the sofa in front of the TV, and often that means no art, because obviously there's only so much art you can do on the sofa without getting paint on the sofa. So therefore that again gets in the way quite a lot, and that's something that I noticed just from being on holiday. So I initially, when I saw this question, thought, oh well, I don't have a problem with this at all. Ha ha ha, look at me. But actually I think we probably all do, to some extent or another. I think the thing to do really is to just be aware of how you're spending your time and be more present with how you're spending your time. I would often sit for hours in front of the TV, and I'd be working away, perhaps on the computer, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't think of it as wasted time necessarily. But if I turn off the TV altogether, I get an awful lot more work done more quickly, and that's valuable. Time is valuable, I think, and I would rather spend my time on things that are useful and important to me than spend that, shaking my fist at the TV at the latest annoying political shenanigans, for want of a better word. So I think the key thing is to just be very conscious of where you're spending your time. You could even go so far as to keep a little journal of how much time you spend on things that you know you don't want to. And some people do a list, don't they? The things I want to do in my day, and things I currently do in my day, and then compare the two and start adjusting so that the things you want to do appear more than the things you currently do that perhaps you don't want to, if that makes sense. So that might be an interesting exercise as well. Another question from the Sisterhood is from Ashley Matheny, and she says, how can I create a sacred space for creating and get rid of the clutter? I also have a hard time choosing what to create to sell to the world. I like doing so much and I don't know if anything is good enough. That's like several questions all at once. It's great though, Ashley. I don't think any of us ever know if what we do is good enough, really. I think that's kind of mindset, really. You have to just decide that you are good enough and what you're doing is good enough and is worthy and should be sent out into the world. And I think, really, you can procrastinate until the cows come home, as the saying goes. And for your own inner critic, quite possibly what you create may never be good enough, because our inner critics are awful, awful versions of ourselves. They say things to us that we wouldn't say to anybody. If you had your best friend came over and said, oh, look at this artwork that I've done, you would never say, well, that's rubbish, would you? But you'd say that to yourself quite easily. So I think that's a mindset thing, Ashley. You have to decide that you are good enough and that you're going to try things. And some things will work, some things won't work. Some things will be brilliant, but you maybe don't have enough of a following yet to make them work. That doesn't mean to say you should necessarily stop. Okay? It takes a long time to build up a business, particularly an online business. It takes a while to get people to follow you, people to trust you, that kind of idea. So be gentle with yourself and just put things out there. If they work, they're brilliant. If they don't work, nobody died, basically. Creating a sacred space for creating. I think you have to be careful with this one. There are things that I do, and there is a blog post on the CGS blog. It's a free art tutorial, the Angel of Letting Go. And in that I show, as one of the warm-up videos, me setting up an altar at my creative desk in my creative space. And that's brilliant. It's a good way to sort of set your intention and focus in, especially if you've had a busy day and you just need to clear your mind for a minute before you start. But I think, don't always think of your creative space as having to be somehow sacred, because that puts an awful lot of pressure on you, and it puts a lot of pressure also on the work that you produce. Sometimes it's perfectly fine for your creative space to just be fun and messy and silly and full of bits of paper and paint all over the place, and it does not matter if what you're creating is what you're wanting to have a go at, and if it makes you happy. So don't get too hung up on being sacred. Not everything has to be. I think we can get a bit sidetracked by that, and I think that feeds into the whole perfectionism side of ourselves sometimes. But things that I do like to do sometimes to set up my creative space is I might burn some incense, for example, in the background as I'm creating. Sets a nice mood. I might just have a little tin with a scented candle inside. This one is rose and raspberry scented, so I might set that going. And then other times, if I feel like it, for whatever reason, I might set up more of a sort of I'm trying to do this without dropping it on the floor. More of a sort of complicated altar. So on here, I've got a lavender candle in the middle, and I've got cypress for letting go of grief and all of the feelings associated with grief. And I might put some crystals onto the plate here as well and set that up as I set my intention before I start to work. But just as often as doing any of those things, I don't do anything. I just turn up and get the paints out and make a nice mess. And there's not always anything sacred about it. And I think that's fine. So it's a good question, but don't let it sidetrack you. That would be my advice with the sacred thing. Getting rid of clutter is just the thing that you have to just tackle head on. I don't know if you are, I can't remember where I met you, Ashley. I don't know if you're in the Leonie Dawson Academy. I can't remember. I've met a lot of people there, but I can't remember if you were one of those people. But if so, she has a Create Your Goddess Haven course, which is quite good. But really, I think in terms of clutter, I did do a post on the blog about organising your wardrobe, and I think the same things apply for the whole house, really. So have a look at what you have, honestly, put it out in front of you, decide if you definitely want to keep it, decide if you definitely want to get rid of it, but then have a bag or a box or whatever in the middle for things that you're just not sure about. Those things can go away in that box, and they can go to the back of a cupboard, or they can go in the loft if you have a loft, or a basement or whatever, into the garage, somewhere a little bit more out of sight. And the wisdom behind that is that if 6 months later you haven't missed those things that are in those boxes or bags put away somewhere out of sight, then you probably don't need them. So that could be something to try. Just sorting things out into those piles can be quite revealing, actually. And even just doing that, you do manage to offload quite a lot of things, either to the bin because they're not good for anything, or along to a charity shop, which again then benefits someone else. So that's what I'd recommend for decluttering. I hope that helps a little bit. Let's have a look at the curious community. There are a few questions in here. So the first one is from Heather Diane Ryan. Hello. And it's about stickers. So she says, does anyone in here still sell stickers? What did it take to get started? We can't afford very much, but I really want to do this. I've been a collector since I was 5 and I still have my sticker book, which sounds awesome. Now I must confess I don't know very much about selling stickers because I never have. But what I did do, Heather, is I did a little bit of online research and found a few resources that I hope might help you, and I've put the links to those into a PDF file, which I will upload to the group after I've finished recording this video and everything else. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Hopefully I'll tag you in that post, Heather, and then you'll be able to find it straight away. And obviously anyone else who might want to know about selling stickers can have a look. But I couldn't really talk from a place of authority about that because I've never done it. But I did have a look and find some resources, so hopefully they will be helpful for you. Next question is from Anne Thompson. And she says, I work full-time at a hospital and have ongoing hand issues, but I'm trying to build my following and make the most of my scanned art with the goal of going full-time artist really soon. How many print-on-demand services, i.e. Society 6, Redbubble, Design My Humans, I've not heard of that one actually, does an artist need? Do you sign up for each service just to make sure no one else grabs your brand name? Great question. Sorry you're having issues with your hands. By the way, hopefully that will be resolved for you. I don't know what that awful noise is. Someone somewhere in the street is making an awful racket. Excuse me a second while I just close in the windows. And hopefully... Oh, that's better. Yeah, random neighbours being randomly noisy. Sorry about that. So, good question. Hopefully your hand... they will find some kind of thing to help you there. I suppose working at a hospital, you're in the right place for that at the very least. Print-on-demand services. I've used a few of them. I have a Society 6 store. I have a Redbubble account. I've sold a couple of things through Redbubble, and I think I made something like, was it 7 or 8 pence the last month. So it's not a big money spinner. And I've never sold anything on Society 6, to be completely honest. It just has never happened. I can't say that I spend an awful lot of time promoting those, to be honest about it either, though. I spend more of my time promoting the things on my website shop, and before that promoting things in my Etsy store. So it's not something I've put a lot of energy into. I think really you can sign up for as many as you would want to. It all gets a bit time consuming though. So say for example if you set up your website and you decided to change your banner so that your branding looks a little bit different, and then you suddenly find you've got to go to Redbubble and Society 6 and here and there and everywhere to change all of those. And I've done this 8,000 times because I'm forever changing my banner on my website and things. It's a ridiculous thing that I do all the time. So it can become quite time consuming, but if you've the energy to set it up, there's nothing to stop you giving it a go. I don't think any of those actually charge you for using them. So it's sort of a win-win. There's no risk to it really. The only risk that there can be for some of these, and I've heard other people talk about this, although it's never happened to me, the only risk that there can be is that because particularly for Society 6 you have to upload your artwork at quite a high resolution. Because of that, people have reported having their art pinched off of those sites, because you can't put a watermark on it, can you? Because that's the actual art that's going to be printed off. Whatever you upload as the public picture is the one that they're going to print from. So that can be a little bit sort of off-putting, I suppose. But like I say, I've never had that happen to me, but I have heard of other people having it happen to them. But then still, there are lots and lots of artists that use those services and seem quite happy with them. So chances are you would be okay. So yeah, I think it's really up to you. You could just go along to each service, like you say, and put in your brand name so that you've sort of saved the address to stop anyone else from taking it. And that might be a good idea. If you've the time to do it, that might be a good idea. But personally, I wouldn't probably bother. I would most likely focus my attention on the bits of the business that I'm really interested in. But if you think this print on demand stuff is going to be your main thing that you're really going to promote, and that's the best way that you're going to sell things, then by all means go for all of them, because like I say, it's risk free, it doesn't cost you anything to use, so why not, really. And final question from Jennifer Stevens: how did you get started selling your art? Also, what program do you use to scan your art, and how do you know what to price your art at? Okay, excellent questions. I got started selling the artwork that I make by starting up an Etsy shop. That was my first step. So, and it was a very, very small shop right back in the beginning. I had quite a few photo-based items because I didn't have a big portfolio of artwork. I was just discovering different techniques and different things. And it just kind of grew and grew and grew and grew and grew from there. So that's where I started. And I had a blog on Blogger at the time. And then I got a website on Weebly and kind of put my blog there with that and tried to make them be designed in a similar way so that they looked kind of cohesive. And then about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I set up a proper WordPress website, wordpress.org that is, with hosting and everything else. And now I have a shop actually on my website. I still have my Etsy shop, it's still there, it still has things in, but I'm trying to focus more of my attention on the website shop because there are less fees involved and therefore more of a profit for me to make. For scanning my artwork, I actually at the moment use Paint, which is a free, well, they call it an app now on the Windows thing, but it's software really. It drives me mad. Anyway, it's a free program that comes with PCs. I'm not sure about Macs. I don't know if it comes free with Macs, but I'm sure there'd be something simple to use from Macs. Macs tend to come loaded with quite a lot of useful software actually. But Paint is the one I use. It's very, very simple. Scan it in at least 300 dots per inch. So when you go into press scan from scanner or camera, you can change the quality of the scan and then push the thing up to 300 at the very least. and then scan it. And then what I often do as well then is go into Photoshop, and if it's a illustration on a white background, what I'll do is I'll turn that transparent using the Magic Wand tool, and then save it as a PNG, so it's a transparent file. Sometimes what happens if you're scanning white pages, the white actually ends up looking very grey off the scanner, and if you just try and lighten the whole page, you end up lightening the colours of your sketch as well, which you might not want. So the Magic Wand tool just turns everything in the background transparent. I do have a blog post with a link to a YouTube tutorial that shows you how to do that. It's the simplest thing in the world. When I first discovered how to do it, I was like, oh God. So yeah, that's what I use. But you can also, if you don't have Photoshop, there is a website called picmonkey.com, and you can use that to actually scrub out the background and lighten it, or you can use the boost function to lighten as well. So if you don't actually have Photoshop, it doesn't mean to say you can't do it necessarily, because I know Photoshop for some people is a bit of a financial commitment, especially if you're not sure if you're going to use it all of the time. So that's scanning the art. And pricing your artwork, I'm not sure I still even in fact know the answer to this one. Not really sure. My prices for art tend to be quite low, particularly for original art, although for prints as well. Where I live at the moment, the part of the country, I live in the UK, part of the country I live in is quite a poor area. People don't tend to have a lot of money, so I live in a village called Cottingham, which is quite a nice village, but an awful lot of the people who live here are pensioners, so they're on a fixed income. And we are next door to a city called Hull, which is quite a deprived area, generally speaking, sort of economically deprived. There's not an awful lot of jobs around and that kind of thing. So my pricing kind of reflects the area that I come from, which sometimes looks strange, I think, online, because there are a lot of people charging a lot more than I do. But I, in my own mind, wouldn't want to sell something online for more money, so have my items for sale at different price points in different places. That, to me, wouldn't feel right. So I tend to price everything the same, rightly or wrongly. I think with pricing, it becomes a bit of a gut instinct thing. If you imagine giving away your art at, I don't know, say $30. So someone comes along and wants to buy you a piece of art that you've created, and they're going to give you $30. Does that make you feel good, bad, or indifferent? If it makes you feel good, then maybe that's the price point for you, if you're happy with that. If it makes you feel bad, then it's probably too low, most likely. So try and think, well, if they said $50, how would that feel? Handing over the artwork for that money, would that feel good, bad, or indifferent? And kind of keep going until you have a figure you're comfortable with. There are kind of methods that say, it's to do with the square inches and the amount of hours and that kind of thing, and you can go down that route. It's completely fine. But for me, it's just a gut instinct thing. What would I be happy to get for this? And I just kind of feel that through in my head until the price point seems right. I tend to price things at $.99, that kind of psychological, makes you think you're getting it cheaper than you are really type of level. But other than that, that's kind of how I go about pricing my items. And that's actually all of the questions we have for this month. So I hope some of that information has been useful for you. If you are viewing this video and you don't know me at all, you haven't met me before, my website is www.acatlikecuriosity.com. So feel free to pop on over and have a look at what's on offer there, say hello, that kind of thing. I would be very happy to see you. And don't forget to join the free Facebook community so that you can actually ask the questions when it comes to September, as opposed to just listening to the answers. Thanks so much for listening, and I shall see you next month with another Curious Chat session.